well, let's say you miss class, right? Because you're allowed to miss twice without me dropping you. And that could be very useful. At least you can catch up on the lecture material. So what I would do, my screen name that I use is for YouTube. J.R.C. Gilroy. Okay, that's my screen. Gilroy's the book I used to use, but that's my channel. And if you want to subscribe, you can. But it's an easy way to find these. And usually what I do is I'll put a moniker. I'll put like BIOL 430, Spring 20, so it's know it's you. Because I've been doing this for a few years now. So if you want, you can go back and look what I taught in the past. But you should pay attention to what I'm teaching to you in particular. Look for BIOL 430. I'll put SP20, so you know it's your term. And that's your class. I only have one section of BIOL 430 this semester, so I'll just go lecture 1, lecture 2, lecture 3, lecture 4, all the way to the end. Okay? Let's see here. All right. So the study of anatomy and physiology is the study of structure and function. It's very important you understand that you're learning both anatomy and physiology at the same time. That's the preferable way we like students to know it here. You can't take anatomy and physiology separately at other colleges, and that's fine. That's what I did as a student. But we actually prefer you to learn it together so you can see that there's a marriage of what's called structure and function. They give you the example of chewing a carrot. First of all, let me define anatomy and physiology. Study of structures. And the key thing, that's the simplest way I could put it. What's the structure? And the key skill is, can you identify it? Which means, can you spell it? Okay. Hey, I had trouble pronouncing some of your names, and you're gonna have trouble pronouncing some of these terms, so take practice to pronounce it and spell it as you go through 430, 431. There are different ways to study anatomy. There's two main ways that you should be aware of. Approaches to study anatomy. One is regional, one is systemic. A regional approach. At all costs, I try not to draw, but pardon me, just let me illustrate this as simply as I can. It's supposed to be some vague human form. Go ahead and laugh, it's okay. I can teach, I can't draw, all right? But regional approach, what does that mean? Let's say we're studying, you want to study this region. The region between the shoulder and the elbow is the arm in anatomy. In a regional approach, let's say the region you're studying is the arm, or in anatomy, arm is the brachium. Okay, that's what we're doing. So what you do is you study everything in that region. Okay, so what's in that region? Well, before you dissect, you could just see the skin and you can kind of palpate for surface features before you even cut things open. Surface anatomy. That's what we call it. You palpate, touch, feel. That's what palpate means. So what are the palpable structures? What are the bony structures you can feel? Oh, I can feel my elbow down there. I can feel this big bicep. I can feel it's kind of hard over here. You know, what are the palpable structures? Sometimes that's what we talk about when we talk about surface anatomy. Today, I'll just kind of teach you what all the regions are called, okay? But then you dissect. You remove the skin, remove the superficial fascia, and you study the muscles of the arm. You study the nerves that innervate the muscles. You study the blood vessels. You study the bone of the arm. There's only one, it's the humerus. You study everything in that region. Then you go to the next region, you know, and the next region, the head, the neck, the thigh, the gluteal region, you know, and you study everything in that region. The other way to study anatomy is the systemic approach. So you got the regional approach and the systemic approach. You study it by systems. Like, for example, let's use the bones as a system, skeletal system. You study the bones of the whole body. Okay, that's the study entire organism. So the reason why I mention that is, for example, if I open your book and I look at the table of contents, I see that your book is arranged systemically. This one, the chapters are arranged by system. However, you should know, I teach part of this course regionally. If you look at the schedule, you'll see that I teach the upper extremity and the spinal cord, vertebral column, as a unit. Okay, so I teach a regional approach. So the reason why I mentioned this at the first day is, let's say, for example, we're studying the arm, and you want to study the biceps brachii. You got to go to the muscle chapter in your book. But let's say you want to study the humerus, the bone. You got to go to another chapter in your book. So, you know, be aware. You're going to have to go to the different chapters when I teach this way later in the class. Okay. So you have regional, systemic. Your book is by chapter systemic. All right. So that's how we study anatomy. So what's the other thing? The physiology. Physiology is the functional aspects of all those systems I just mentioned. I mean, it's hard to kind of put it in a nutshell. Okay, let me draw a little stick figure again. All right, pretend you got the human organism and their environment that surrounds them. Let's put them in a bubble. Usually what we say on day one, it's like, let's say there's some insult that invades the bubble. Maybe it's a cold day. Maybe it's cold temperature, reduced temp. Okay, some irritant, all right, something to stimulate the system. There's rest, state of rest, and a state of response. Yeah, anything that makes the organism get chilly, the body responds to maintain homeostasis. So, Homeostasis is the key to understanding physiology, how things re-regulate themselves in response to insults on the human body. Whether it's you eat food and you have to digest it and things like that. So I'll go through the steps of homeostasis when I get to that slide. So in a nutshell, physiology are the homeostatic mechanisms that you study to regulate different things like blood pressure, blood sugar, everything you can think of. Now, one thing you'll also see through anatomy and physiology is the structure-function relationship shown here in this example. I'll put that in the phrase of a question. What is structure, function, relationship? They give the very easy example of eating a carrot using teeth. Bite a piece of carrot off, on the left there, you got your incisors. They're sharp, they're for cutting. So that's their structure. So their function is cut. Okay? But then you want to chew it. You don't chew with your front teeth, you chew with your back teeth, right? The molars. What you see is molars are more flat, and they have these cutting, chewing surfaces called cusps. That's the structure. So the function is mastication. That's the anatomy fancy talk for chew. Okay, so there's always a structure-function relationship, so that's an easy example, and you'll see that throughout the course. So also on the first day, to teach the language, basically, 430, 431 is a foreign language class. You just got to understand what the words mean, and then you can start to understand the concepts, apply them to the field you want to go into, nursing, medicine, physical therapy, whatever it is. The first thing you want to do, what are all the words that the doctors are going to use, okay? And so I'll spend a lot of time defining those words. The very first thing is, anatomists, you need a reference, a point of reference when you start talking about anatomy. You can't say up here, down there, and point. You have to use very precise language. So the first thing I'll define is the anatomical position demonstrated by this person standing up. The human body is a specimen. My wife still looks at these pictures as I'm preparing them for life. She goes, "Ugh, what are you looking at?" It's still that kind of, but it's a specimen. I've worked with cadavers for many years now, and it's a physical specimen. We get our donated bodies from the UC Davis Donated Body Program, and all our bodies are willed for study. We pay a fee. It's like $2,500 for a 3-year use. They're property of the university, and after that, we send it back. They give a funeral service for all the families of the donated bodies. And usually, when I study a cadaver, it's not standing up, right? It's laying on a gurney. But the anatomical position is you're standing erect. Gaze, you're looking forward. I'll say gaze, forward. Not looking up, you're not looking down, you're looking straight ahead. Notice the palms. The palms are facing forward. The feet are close together. Some books, they'll show the feet slightly apart. Some, they show it completely together. But that detail doesn't matter to me. I'll just say feet close together, not necessarily touching. It might be that. feet close together. That is the anatomical position. But like I said, when I study cadavers on a gurney, if you're lying face up and I'm studying the specimen, that's called supine. Prone is lie face down. Prone, face down. So those are the basic positions, anatomical position in a book, but studying cadaver, it's supine or prone. Okay? If I want to study the back and it's lying face up, I gotta flip the cadaver. The other terms here are terms of relativity. Okay, everything is based off the anatomical position, but there are other terms that we can use to help describe the part of the body we're talking about. So let me list the other terms that are listed on this figure. Terms of reference. For example, I'll start with superior, inferior. The head is superior to the feet, okay? So superior is more to the head, inferior is more towards the feet. I'll list an example. Head is superior to, I don't know, say the neck. Superior, inferior, that's the most common one. The other one is front and back. We say anterior, posterior. How about the nose is anterior to the ear, or maybe that's not the best one. How about the breast is anterior to the back, okay? It just means closer to the front or closer to the back. That's basically what it means. Let me write that down. Towards the front. Posterior, behind it. Towards the back. Anterior, posterior. The other thing is, we are basically a bilateral organism. So imagine a line dividing you to right and left halves. Okay? If you're closer to that midline, you're medial. If you're further away from it, you're more lateral. So medial and lateral are the relative terms. Medial, lateral. Example, how about on the anatomical position, the thumb is lateral to the pinky finger, right? In the anatomical position, palms facing forward. Thumb is lateral to pinky finger. That's not an anatomy word. It's digit 5, but it's the first day, right? I think you get the idea. But look at the feet. The feet are different than the hands. Oh, the big toe is medial to the small toe, right, in the anatomical position. So that's why the anatomical position is always a useful reference point. Medial, lateral. The last one is, on this figure, is proximal distal. Because we have appendages attached to our trunk, our arms and our legs, proximal and distal are useful for those extremities, upper limb or lower limb. Proximal, distal. Like, think, if it's in your proximity, it's closer. If it's a long distance away, it's further away. So for example, proximal, it's closer to the trunk attachment, right? That's what proximal means. Closer to trunk attachment. Distal means further away from the point of attachment. I'll just say further out. I'll give you an example. The wrist is distal to the elbow. Well, let me ask you this. Which is more proximal, X or Y? Which is closer to the point of attachment? X is, see, I had to think about it too. Yeah, X is proximal to Y on that picture. Let me ask you another one. This time, look at it, think about it, don't say it out loud, commit yourself to an answer and write it in your notes. Physically write it down in pen. Did you put Y? Oh, good. Yeah, see, and if you missed it, you can't deny it because you wrote it down, right? So, yeah, these are the terms, and medial, lateral, proximal, distal. The other one is when you dissect and look at a cross section of things, you have superficial, deep. Superficial, closer to the surface. In that slab of skin, you're looking at epidermis, dermis, hypodermis. You don't know the layers yet, but if it's closer to the surface, it's more superficial. Anything underneath that, I guess is a good way to describe it, is deep. In terms of the regional terms, so we can just look at a model of the human body, and all the different regions, before you even dissect, remove the skin, have regional names, and there's many of them. And I even crossed some out. So this is the ones that are left that you need to know. Well, let's go through them. You need to know on the first day what all the parts are called. On the surface, before you even look at it, a single muscle or bone. Okay. So this is the surface anatomy part, still under terms of reference. Regional terms, call it. What are the different regions called? We can go from head to toe. Let's start with the head. The word for head in anatomy is cephalic. It's the head, okay? The head sits on top of your neck. That's the cervical region. So I'm going to point. Cephalic, the term is right here. I know it's hard to see in the back. And then there's a cervical region. cervical that's an adjective. It's always cervical region, but I'm not going to put region every time. Just understand it. It's describing a region. In this case, that's the neck. And let's go back and look at some subregions of the head that I skipped over. I left orbital, nasal, and oral. So for the orbital region, that's the region concerning your eye orbit. For the nasal region, just think nose, where your nose is. And for the oral region, that's your lips, your mouth. Why don't we take a